Screen's on. Lights good. Okay, so you're on. I can't. Can you hear me okay? You can only tell if we were. Okay.
You know that, right?
Oh, we got it? Nice.
Can you just keep an eye on people as they come in? Because it's still. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. It's hopefully with the technology is going to work. We're live streaming on YouTube. It's being recorded, and we'll be able to do Q&A with people that are here and people that are remote. So we think that'll all work out. But thank you all for coming out. So I'm Tony Gonsalves, I'm on the town board. And with me today we have Tyler Post, who's with VRI, Joe McLaughlin, who's with VRI, they're the operators of the plant. And from the engineering firm that we use, Delaware Engineering, we have Bill Wright and Robert Flores. Can you hear okay? Is it coming through the speakers? It's not? Oh, I gotta use my, yeah, okay.
How's this? Hello?
So hopefully, I'll try to talk loud, but I'll hold mic as well. So I put together a presentation that goes through a lot about Oakridge, and then we'll have an opportunity for some Q&A. So I'm going to get started because it's about 25 slides. So I'm going to go through it quick. Well, not too quick, but I'll give everyone an opportunity for questions, and then at the end, we'll have more Q&A. And we'll have Q&A with folks that are remote as well. And I'll get to Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and get started.
You do it from either one?
My screen?
Yeah, you can do it from yours if you can. You have your thumb drive?
Just open up the app here. I'll tell you what, can you do it? Put it up on yours?
Yeah.
No, I'll go over there.
Yeah, I can check out what's going on yours.
It's already up on there.
There you go. It takes a minute.
Oh, it's already up, of course. Yeah, so yeah. Just do the.
Yeah, we need to get that mouse.
It's right here.
You want the PowerPoint?
Yeah, yeah. Just do screen. Let me see. That's already. Yeah, it's already on the screen. So if I do,
What's going down?
if I do, hold on a second. Let me just see if I can get this. Yeah, I'll do it here. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. Hold on. It's not.
You're sharing the screen.
Hold on a second.
Oh, let me unshare yours. Okay.
Hold on a second. Let me.
Are you sharing on this one?
No, I'm not. me just do, hold on a second. I'm just gonna open that up again here. Hold on a second for you. Where, it's on the desktop, Joe?
Yes. There's two of them here.
Okay. Yeah, the mouse isn't working. Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll just use this. I think we're good now. There we go. Okay. All right, so I think we're good now. The agenda, we're going to start with introductions to the stakeholders. We're going to go to the history of the water plant operations, projects, and we'll review upgrades that are in the works. So, introduction to stakeholders. So we have the town of Lewiston is the owner of the water and wastewater plant. You have the Oakridge Water District, right? Another major stakeholder in the plant, which is composed of the commercial and retail space and approximately 900 residents and 400 plus residential units. And this presentation will be made available for everyone. So it'll be on the website for download. So if anyone wants it, you can pull it up the website. VRI, Environmental Services, is the plant operator. Tyler and Joe here. Delaware Engineering, the civil and environmental engineering firm that the town utilizes. So we have Bill Bright and Robert Flores. And of course, there's just the county department of health. I tried to get them to come to this meeting, but they don't do that. So they said, give them their phone number. So that's the phone number. They say, if you have any questions about the water district, the public water supply, you can give them a call. Okay, we have a reform committee that includes the folks within the community. So the residential community, we have Erica Hazel, represents Laurel Ridge and Jeff Over, representing Conan Estates, and then Robin Durston, so Robin's here. And then we have property manager Michael Barton, Mike's here. Bill Pine is the representative commercial there. I think Phil is there. Is he not? And then we have from the town, I have myself on the liaison with the town board of the water district. And for Supervisor Parsons and Joe Smith, our facilities director, who I think just spoke out, he's here at Mr. G Center. The plant was built in the early 80s. In 1990, the plant was approved when Conant Valley was built. Was the next approval that we have heard of by the Department of Health. In 1995, the town asked Delaware to inspect it. Sorry. They're not getting screen sharing. Okay, sorry. The screen's not being shared. Oh, hold on. Yeah. Hold on. How come it's not Joe?
You can make sure yours is.
Share it from mine if you can. It's not, for some reason here, it's not pulling up the file.
Which file is it here, though?
No. It's open on there, but it's not coming up on the share screen.
Yeah.
Share. So.
Okay, let's see.
Okay.
Is it sharing now? It is? Okay. That's weird. Okay.
If everyone's okay with that.
Okay. I'll keep my distance, so. That's it. Okay, good. Which screen this? Wait a minute. So what's this here? Oh, so we're.
Which one is that?
So click on that one.
This is not what's here. Yeah. I'll tell you what, design.
That's sharing.
That's the one that's sharing. That one?
Well, actually, no.
Hold on.
Can you change the next slide?
Oh, here. Okay. So let me see if I can change it. Oh, yeah, it's good, it's good. All right.
So it might be, it's like a 30-second delay. So
Is it sharing?
well, no, wait, it takes 30 seconds.
Okay. So let me, see if you get the second slide in on your phone.
Yeah, it's good.
It's good? The meeting agenda?
Yeah, it's changing. There's a 30-second lag.
There's a 30-second lag, okay, all right.
It is
All right.
moving around.
Okay, so I'm gonna start over for the folks that missed the beginning. So meeting agenda, introductions, history, operations, projects, upgrade list. The stakeholders, you got the town, you have Oakridge Water District, VLI, Environmental Services who are here, Delaware Engineering, who are here as well. Westchester County Department of Health, who couldn't be here because they don't attend meetings, but they gave us questions. The committee that we formed to represent the district includes folks from the residential side, Eric Agro, Jeff Holbrook, Robin Gersten. Commercial is Phil Pine. Property manager Mike Lombardo is here. Robin is here as well. And of course, the town of Lewisboro, folks like I named before. A little bit of the history. The plant was built originally in in the 80s. When Conant Valley went in, there was an approval from the County Department of Health for the use of the plant by that subdivision. The town asked Delaware to inspect the facility. There had been some issues and concerns about the status of the plant. And the town were looking for a recommendation for a possible takeover of the plant. Delaware agreed after the investigation that the town should take over because of the condition of the water treatment plant. The town board at the time decided not to do that. Fast forward to 2002, the water treatment plant was in complete failure. There was no operational treatment of the water. The green sand filter system had not been maintained and was actually bypassed. That's the point where the water, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but the water wasn't even going through that system. The anthracite carbon system had been installed and was the only operational filtration, but it also was not maintained, and that led to bad water quality. So again, this is 2002. In July 2002, the town took control and formed the water and sewer districts that you have today. Yes?
Why wasn't it maintained? That was the responsibility was.
That was the original developer and owner of the Oakridge.
It was not.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so, yeah. I'm sorry, say it again. We represented the commercial, yeah, so he's made aware of, right. Yeah, so yeah, yeah, let me go through the presentation and we'll get it. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Well, what I'm going to do is whenever Q&A, you're going to step up to the microphone. Okay, so let's wait till then. So the town took control in July 2002. The town retained Delaware Engineering, who was at the time working the Wild Oaks district, right? The water or sewer or both?
With a private owner.
With the private owner, right? Right. And so the town retained Delaware Engineering to design and upgrade and improve the water system. At that time, we ended up bringing in tanker trucks to provide water supply until the new wells could be drilled and the new treatment could be rebuilt. Carbon filters that were in place but not maintained, we ended up repairing them for temporary use. That was the only filtration that was being used at the time when the town took over the plant. In May 2005 was when the town of Lewisboro received, for the first time, the New York State DEC Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, SPDES, permit to operate the wastewater plant. In January 2010, which is when all the work that had been done, that was designed by Delaware, had been completed, construction, all the filtering systems put in, that was completed around that time period. January 2010 is when we received approval from the County Department of Health, what they call the approval for completed works for public water supply improvement. And that was what the plant was sized for, 80,000 gallons per day, the flow rate. A little bit of the history. This is the original green sand filter that was in the plant when the town took it over. It's that single vessel. All the water that was feeding the community was going through that vessel, but that had not been maintained. So the media, the green sand.
It wasn't even filled with green sand. It was filled with rocks.
It was filled with rocks. Okay, so even worse. So that was offline. They actually it was bypassed when the town took it over. That system had been bypassed. These are the anthracite carbon filters. Those three vessels that were also not maintained, but then we were able to repair them so that we had some form of filtration in place at the time. That's what the vessels look like today. They're still there in the plant, but they're not being used. We are looking to repurpose them for an upgrade that we're planning on doing when we put in the GAC system. I think that's when we're going to consider putting these in place. And we can explain later what they're going to be used for. Well, actually, let me explain now. So this is going to be used potentially to mix, to better mix the...
Well, it'll provide additional contact time for the oxidant, for the potassium permanganate, and the pH adjustment to mix. Right now, it's instantaneous. We add the chemical and it runs right into the filter. So it'll give it time for the chemicals to react, and it'll create a much better treatment.
Okay. So that's the potential idea. So this, that blue vessel that's on, all the way on the end, it's hard to see. That was the original single filtering system that was in place. With the redesign by Delaware, we put in basically two stages. We used that existing vessel. We added a second, third, and a fourth. So you have two stages of filtering that's still in use today in the plant. But as you can see, that room became quite crowded.
Yeah, 4 6-foot diameter pressure filters. 2 of them are mixed media and 2 of them are green sand.
Right. So the stage 1 is the mixed media. Stage 2 is the green sand.
That's right.
And we'll get into what those stages do exactly. This is the water plant schematic. So you see the 4 circles. That's the stage 1, the stage 2 filtering, the mixed media, the green sand. Water comes from the wells on the left, comes in through those filtering systems. You have the sodium hydroxide for pH adjustment. You have potassium permanganate, which is being fed. And I'll go into what each of those are for. Then you have the chlorine feed for disinfection. The water goes into the storage tank, which is the upper right. It comes back from the storage tank back to the plant to get pumped out to the entry point for distribution. So that's what's in there today. The process we have 5 wells that are used to source water. 3 of them are running concurrently. System flushing was performed twice a year. With the amount of sediment, now keep in mind, with the amount of time that the plant was not well maintained, you had untreated water being distributed for many years. That resulted in a lot of sediment being collected in the distribution system, in the mains and pipes. So we were doing
with no means to flush.
With no means to flush, that was the other right. We didn't have the high volume pump to do the proper flushing. So we were doing flushing twice a year. There were still complaints about sediment and groundwater, which we attributed to the sediment buildup within the pipe. So whenever there's any disturbance in water flow, it causes turbidity in the system, and that turbidity will pick up the sediment that's been collected over the years in the pipes. So what we did to improve that is, well, we moved to quarterly flushing after we decided to do installation of flush valves at each of the bed ends. So you have the mains, you have pipes coming off those mains into the buildings. When they arrived, designed the development, ideally it should have been a loop system where water circulates and goes back. So what they ended up designing is water going into the building, and it was pretty much stagnant. It was a dead end. So we put in flush valves to allow us to better flush those dead ends. And that was done, we finished that up this year, April timeframe. And now we're doing quarterly flushing because we want to make sure we get as much of that sediment out. I was talking to Dan Mayorga, who also works for BRI. He mentioned to me that initially when they were doing flushing from the hydrants, it would take about 10 minutes for clear water to come out, right? Now it takes about 2 to 3 minutes. And so it's getting better. So the flushing is helping, and these valve installations have helped. So that was something that we, after reviewing what else can be done, this was the next logical step. We did that, and we're hoping that eventually we're going to return to twice-a-year flushing. Once we finish, we see that the quarterly flushing has done its thing and cleared up the lines. Go ahead. Yeah, I believe they're 6-inch. 6-inch mains.
6 and 8,
6 and 8.
mostly 8.
Mostly 8. Okay, mostly 8-inch. Yeah.
And then 6 inch goes to.
Yes, right.
Fire flow requires 8.
Okay. So now, then we have the filtering stages that I had already discussed. We have the stage 1, which is the mixed media filtration, used for iron and manganese removal, which the groundwater is high in iron and manganese. We know that. Stage 2, green sand media filtration, removal of total suspended solids, including further removal of iron and manganese that wasn't captured by the stage 1. Chemical treatment, coupled with the SCADA control system, which was put in early last year, I think it was, early 2020. And that control system was put in to better balance the chemistry that's used in the treatment, as well as some other things. It does monitoring of, I'll let you guys speak to that, when we get to it, but the sodium hydroxide is one of the chemicals we use. It's for pH balance. The other chemical is sodium hypochlorite, which is essentially chlorine. That's for disinfection, and it's a controlled dosage to maintain a chlorine residual of 0.7 to 1 milligrams at the entry point of distribution. So we want to keep the chlorine at that low level. Potassium permanganate is what's used for oxidation of iron and manganese, and that's what has caused the pink water issues that we've had a couple of times. The last one was recently, and that was a result of a flow meter at the plant, which was miscommunicating to the SCADA control system, And the flow meter, typically the plant is running at about 50 gallons per minute. I mean, per day. Per minute.
Nope, you're right. 50
Per minute,
gallons
right?
per minute, yeah.
And the computer system thought the plant was running at 210 gallons per minute. So the computer system said, oh, I need to inject more sodium, potassium permanganate. And that's what caused the pink water. So we had to drain the storage tank one day, the next day we ended up flushing the main. So it took a little while to do this. It was like Memorial Day weekend when this happened. So hopefully that won't happen again. We fixed it. We adjusted the computer system so it never thinks that the plant is running at that much flow because it won't. So we set some limits in that software.
Tony, one of the biggest problems is the concentration of iron and manganese in the wells is changeable. It goes up and down. So it makes it very difficult for the operators to manage that. And within a day, it ranges up and down.
Right.
So through their process control, they take a sample, they make an adjustment. The next day, they could take a sample and it could be dramatically different.
Right.
And that all impacts the concentration of potassium permanganate that they're at.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so maybe, I don't know if VLI, if you guys want to talk a little bit more about the process, if you want me to go back to like the process slide, the schematic.
Sure, yeah.
Want to add to it, or?
You did a pretty good job. I could run through again if you'd like.
Okay. You want to maybe describe like how the pumps work and?
Sure. So we use 3 of the wells at a time for the demand that's required. So wells usually 2, 4, 6, and 7, but we'll run 3 of them at a time and then alternate 1 well out based on the level of iron and manganese that we test for daily. Goes through the filters, like Tony had said, and then we have a jockey. It's called a jockey pump in the plant that takes the water from the treated water from the storage tank and sends it out to the distribution system at a specific pressure, and it's supposed to maintain that pressure. It's 66 psi. So you should never see too big fluctuations in pressure. And then we have backup booster pumps, which are also pressure pumps, and the high volume pump, which is for fire flows. And then also we utilize this for the hydrant flushing.
The 2 pumps that are here, those are those the booster pumps?
Those are the booster pumps. So the jockey pump isn't actually on there.
On here.
Yeah, but so there's one more pump that we use. It runs continuously on a VFD or variable frequency drive that controls the motor speed.
Right.
And then those booster pumps are backup. So if the pressure were to dip too low, a booster pump would kick on and satisfy that pressure.
So the jockey pump runs 24/7, right? It's
Correct.
It's constantly pushing water through to the
It's
storage
ramping up and
tank.
down in speed.
Right.
Instead of having pressure set points where the booster pumps will kick on at 40 psi to repressurize the system and then shut off at 70 and then go back down to 40 and back up to 70. It's one constant. There's always between 65 and 66 pounds pressure.
Right. Okay. So, let's go to.
Do you have any redundancy built into your systems in case something with jockey pump breaks or whatever, is there something to take over?
Correct. Yep. So those pressure pumps that Tony had on the diagram, they don't run under normal operation, but if the jockey pump were to go down, the pressure in the system would go down, and when it gets down to 40, it would call a booster pump to run automatically and meet that pressure. So that'd give us time to make repairs. So we have 2 pressure pumps, and then the high volume pump can also pressurize the system if need be. So there's actually 3 backups. And then in that time, we could either make repairs or replace the jockey pump.
And this happens without manual intervention?
It's automatic. Yep. Correct.
Is that the SCADA control system?
It's SCADA controlled, and all these alarms, so the alarms show up on SCADA, and it notifies us. We have a 24/hour, 24/7 answering service that will call our on-call operator and notify them right away if the pressure dip. But the plant itself will change the pump configuration automatically.
That SCADA system was installed as part of the triangle methods project we had. So 60% of the cost is covered by a WIA grant. WIA is Water Infrastructure and Improvement Act, grant. Which was actually the first time we actually tap into a grant for the water plant.
Because you
2018.
don't,
Yeah.
because of your MHI, you don't qualify for most grants.
Right. The MHI is median household income. Because Lewisboro has a high, I think it's 90,000.
And you're 147,000.
Ours is 147,000, right? And the MHI is 90, which doesn't permit us to buy acres. Yeah, so Oakridge actually found out you're still above the level. I have some data on that. I looked that up. Yeah, I'll share that with you. Based on, so there's the option to do another review, but this is based on data from, yeah, I don't know if it's 2010, it's up, yeah.
You can always do an income survey, right? There's companies that do income surveys and they would, we've done it, you know, when the client asks, we get, you know,
Right.
know who's putting in touch with them.
Right.
If you think it's close or.
Right, okay. So the operations, we'll get into the water sampling and the results. So water sampled and tested by DRI per a test plan that's developed under the DOH Department of Health guidance. We are required to meet compliance with Part 5 of the New York State Sanitary Code. And PFAS, you know, that's the, I'll start with that one. So that's the thing that's been on the news and everyone's talking about. So New York State lowered the MCL, which is the maximum contaminant level, from 70 parts per trillion to 10 parts.
There was a suggested MCL, but there was never an MCL. So what New York State did was actually establish an MCL of 10 parts per trillion.
They established, but the recommendation before was a suggested.
It was a suggested health recommendation from the EPA.
Okay, and the EPA currently is at 70.
The EPA is still at the recommendation. They still haven't passed an MCL.
Right.
Just last week, they just moved the legislation and they selected the class of perfluoroalkaloids to be regulated as a class. That means all the PFAS will be eventually regulated as a class, and then the PFOS and the PFAS are also going to be regulated individually. And those, there's like a 5-year process to take chemicals that haven't been regulated and bring them to a regulated status.
Right.
Once it becomes regulated, then it falls under the Superfund regulation. And believe it or not, there's people fighting against the water industry is fighting against it because they don't want to be, they're afraid they're going to be held liable for the high levels when they weren't really responsible for the contamination.
Right.
We follow, I follow the PFAS there.
Right, yep.
We have a lot of clients with the same issue.
Yeah, I know, in talking to the New York State Department of Health, they shared that what we're going through here is happening to a lot of other citizens in the state. So the PFAS is as a result of them lowering to 10 parts per trillion in August. The requirement that came from the Department of Health was for us to test quarterly for these substances, starting in first quarter of this year.
Each well.
Each well, correct. But we're also testing the entry point.
That's right.
Right. The entry point is the distribution. Once it leaves the plant and then it leaves the storage tank for distribution, that's the entry point. So the first quarter of this year testing, we had a well that was above the MCL. But the overall testing for both Q1 and Q2, the entry point was measured to be below that MCL of 10 parts per trillion. I took this from a document from the New York State Department of Health regarding PFOA, PFOS, and the 1,4-dioxane, which is another substance that's measured. And I just wanted to highlight, so it talks, basically it gets into what I just discussed. But the highlighted is something that I wanted everyone to be aware of. It says here, because MCLs are set at levels with a large margin of protection, an exceedance of an MCL does not mean that water is unsafe for use with the public water system, while the public water system takes actions to reduce the level. So that's what we're doing. We're taking action now to reduce the level. But because, well, in our case, we haven't exceeded the MCO on the distribution side. But even if we did, they're saying there's a large margin of protection. So I have that document. I'll be putting it on our website. So if anyone wants to read the entire, there's more to this. This is just a section I wanted to share with everyone tonight. The other thing that's gotten quite a bit of attention lately is lead testing. I group it under lead and copper because it's tested currently.
It's really corrosivity.
Corrosivity, yes, that's correct.
There's a requirement for corrosivity. And when the water comes out of the ground, pHs are like 6, so your water out of the ground is very corrosive. Which means that water is a solvent, so it can dissolve things like metals. And when the pH is low like that and it's corrosive, it has a higher reactivity and it can dissolve metals at a higher rate. Because of when your homes were built, it's pretty sure that it was all the plumbing was put together with lead and solder. So the way they approach it is they want you to, what we have to do is make the water to be on the other side of the corrosivity. We actually have to lay down, we have to actually coat the pipes with hardness. And that's a protected layer. So the water never comes in contact with the lead and solder or dissolving the copper. So we actually add hardness. That's one of the things that sodium hydroxide does, is it adds the hardness. We try to run a pH around 7.2 to 7.4, which is 7 is neutral. And that provides the protection of the inner walls of the pipe. So when we take a sample though, it has to be from a faucet that's well used, because it has to be used enough to get the coating of the hardness around inside to protect it from the water, from dissolving the lead and the copper, so it's not in the sample. So that's the first thing you have to do. You have to make sure that the sample is from a faucet that's well used. Secondly, it can't be downstream of the water softener. Because what a water softener does is removes all that hardness and makes your water corrosive again, and it dissolves the lead that's in the solid. So if you have a water softener, it's counterproductive for the corrosivity that we're trying to prevent. So with the lead and copper law, it's about maintaining a certain level of protection within the pipes by using calcium carbonate, which is part of this. So quarterly, are we quarterly?
No, it was every 3 years now.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, it was annual, and we just got moved to
We do
once
10
every.
samples.
10 samples annually, and we just got approval to go to every 3 years after this year.
And what it is, it's a first flush sample, and you have to make sure it's not downstream of a water softener, and you have to make sure that it's a well-used faucet, like a kitchen sink. And then what we do is we actually drop a bottle off, and the first flush in the morning, the homeowner fills the bottle, and then and that's what we test is the water provided to us by the homeowners. And those homes are selected based on the worst possible scenario within the system. So they're usually on head ends and things like that. So because we want to know what the worst possible scenario is to make sure that we're getting the hardness that we actually add to the water throughout all the plumbing systems. The best way to combat any type of lead or copper being in your water is to run your water until you feel it got cold. Once it gets cold, then you know you have fresh water and it's probably not corrosive. Hot water, though, can be corrosive because it sits in the hot water here, and it can be more reactive. So that's people think of lead and copper, and they think that lead and copper is coming from the well. There's no lead and copper coming out of the ground from the well. It's an in-home issue, and it's a water corrosivity issue.
So the in-home issue, is it with all of our piping throughout the condo unit, or is it under a space? in our showers?
It's pretty much every, all of your plumbing connections, each time a pipe comes together, and if it's copper, it's throughout your house, and all of the fixtures, if they're brass, they have lead in them. So the best thing to do is to run the water until you feel cold water. And then I would be willing to guarantee there wouldn't be lead in it if it's cold.
So cold showers?
Well, you usually don't drink hot water.
Shower.
Okay. I mean, we'd have to test, we don't.
Excuse me, so you tested cold,
That's right.
but it's possible that hot water.
Because of what a hot water heater can do, yeah.
What I recommend, anyone that wants to ask a question, step up to the mic, because we want to make sure the folks on Zoom can hear your question.
My understanding is that right now what you're saying is that the lead is leaching from the attachment of the pipes.
The only source of lead is in the solder.
Is in the solder of the pipe. Oh, sorry. Is that better? And you're saying that in order to prevent this leaching, you have to make the water hard. So these carbon filters that you were referring to early on, my understanding is the carbon does not remove heavy metals. So the only way to fix this issue is to coat the pipes with.
It's what every water system in America does.
Okay. So we have an idea of where this is coming from. This idea of testing every 3 years is ludicrous. It's a problem. We need to test this regularly. This can't be every 3 years to test for lead in the water. Even if we resolve this problem in the next 2 months, 3 months, ideally, why would we test every 3 years? We're paying water bills, we're paying taxes. We deserve to have the testing done much more frequently. That's very
So
irresponsible.
that's what we're told to sample by the health departments.
You're told that when there's a problem, or you're told that just in general when everything's normal?
No, we have predetermined sites that are sent to us that we legally have to take, determined by the health department, and if we don't, we get a violation. And then, so they were the ones that told us, do not do it yearly, go to once every 3 years.
My question is, if there's a problem with the water.
There's not a problem with the water, there's no lead in it.
There was lead in the water, not this past water report, but the one prior.
But it,
Who sampled?
but let me just clarify.
I'm sorry?
Oh,
That was in your report, whoever wrote the report.
No,
It's gonna be the AWQR. It's gonna be in the AWQR.
Thank you.
yeah, that was from hygienics.
oh, that was from the test that you.
That didn't come from us.
The association ran, and there was one unit that had.
And we-
But it's,
We didn't do that. We don't know.
Yeah, so that was the sample.
but don't we need to find out? One child having that water is too much. One elderly person dying from drinking that is too much. This needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved yesterday. We have all been suffering with this. It's ridiculous for Westchester County to have this situation going on, and we don't even get a notification. We read it in the paper. What is the problem? This needs to.
You understand that we didn't get this.
I understand that, but I'm talking about the town, I'm talking in general. The sampling needs to be done more frequently, the notification needs to be much more effective. There are renters that don't have access to certain information. There are people that don't have computer access that are not on the portal. This is like, we're kind of band-aiding things and everyone's got a little part to play. We need to come together and resolve this.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add, there is a demarcation line, right? So the water that's being distributed goes into the buildings through a service line. What happens past the building, that's not the responsibility of ERI or the water plants.
Whose responsibility is that?
Whoever built those buildings in the new society.
No. Oh, so who are we paying our water bill to? I may not understand it. I'm trying to understand it. That's what it said in the last report.
That comes from the fact that it's a solvent. And when it gets in the home has lead inside, right?
Yeah.
That holds the pipe.
I understand that.
Or grass fittings.
Yes.
And then that's like, actually, it reacts with that. And it can dissolve
Right.
it, right?
So the water from the plant, okay.
We take what's called a representative sample, okay? We try to take with one sample to predict the water quality throughout the system, right? That's why there's 10 samples that covers a wide area of the distribution system. The issue with the sampling that you're talking about is none of the certified operators took those. Okay, they were done by IGs. We didn't do those, all right? We don't know anything about those results. We don't know where they were collected. The addresses weren't being put on sampling spots. So there's no address.
That sounds ridiculous, and I'm gonna, I believe you, I'm just saying, that's ridiculous.
So we don't have.
So we resampled that same location at 163 Royal Road.
So.
That's-
Any of the regulations under the sanitary code? We don't know if it was downstream of a water softener. If it was a water softener, that takes the hardness out. And there's no protection on that pipe, so you're gonna have nothing.
I understand that. I guess what I'm trying to do is.
They're not representative of what's going on, because we don't know where we can sample.
Right, and that's exactly my point. We don't know if any of our water is leaching, having lead in it from leaching pipes. And that may be not BRI's issue, but it's the town's issue, because we're all paying a water bill every month.
But all of the samples that BRI has collected have been under the MCL for lead.
But you're saying, you just said, if something is going on with the pipes in our house, we wouldn't know unless a sample is collected from our main faucet, our most used faucet. And I don't know about anyone else, but I do wash my clothes in hot water, take a hot shower. You know, hot water is important. Cooking is important. We don't know if using that water for cooking is harming all of us. Again, I understand what you're saying, and you guys may be doing exactly what you're supposed to do, but the testing has to go further than this. We need testing in each and every single condo, not downstream, not a dead end, not this, not that. No, this needs to be taken care of. This is a major health code violation.
Have you discussed that? Robin, if you can just state what you were, can you go up to the microphone? The mic. So Robin's the president of the HOA for condos.
Right, for Oakridge condos. We did an independent water test with hygienics. We got the results. They tested one unit on each street. We got the results, and it was for the lead and copper, and thank God there was no excess lead or copper. We just got those results. But again, that was for one unit on each street, and it was cold water.
Right, but there was one test that you shared with us.
Right.
Where the lead level was high, so we added that to our.
Correct, 163 originally had a high level.
Right.
It was retested, and I guess according to your retest, the level was fine.
And according to your retest, it was fine as well, the hygienics retest. Is that what you said?
No. We didn't do that.
Okay. Because
Each street,
yeah, I spoke to Bob, I think, at hygienics, I gave him a call just to ask him about their testing.
Yeah.
And he said basically the same as what Bill was saying now, that it's, you have to look at the fixtures potentially. People buy units, they change out the fixtures, they put in a brass fixture, there could be lead there.
So if there's lead in the pipes, then who's responsible for?
Okay, I can't understand what you're saying. Who's responsible for paying for the work to fix the problem if it's not just my unit? The homeowner, the town, HOA,
I don't know, Mike, can you answer that from a property management perspective? I mean, I know the answer is some of that I
If it's a pipe that services just a unit, and the unit owner will be responsible to maintain, repair, and replace the pipe.
So we got.
So we have people on Zoom.
They're asking me a question. So I apologize.
Yeah,
Okay.
you'll go next, say that.
Okay. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Your condominium documents are very clear. If it's a common pipe that services more than one unit, the association would be responsible for that repair. If it serviced only that unit, then the unit owner is responsible for that repair and or replacement. Now, the two tests that were done by VLI and the most recent test that was done by Hygienics, which we received the information this morning, there is no lead above the levels for safety. Now, my suggestion is that if everybody wants to test, if they don't feel comfortable, have a test done of your unit. It's not that hard. You can't test 300 and some odd units. You can. You can. It's just more money that you're going to spend. And maybe some people don't want to. Maybe some people don't think it's necessary. If you think it's necessary, it's your home. Do what you feel comfortable within your home. Thank you.
If I'm building, everybody tests positive for lead, then the condo, you're responsible to change the price of
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I said if the pipes are common and you service more than one, then the association, I mean, the association is responsible. This,
We are the association.
okay, it's your money. Second issue is that if it's just an individual unit, your faucet, your sink, whatever it is, you are responsible. You can sit and you have one. The issue is not over. But it won't matter.
Thank you. So Jeff, I just want to say, okay, whoever wants to say something, you're gonna have to go there. People on Zoom can't hear you. Because that's also very hard. Interruptions are not going to solve anything. They're just going to make discussions longer than necessary. They're going to, it's important to let everyone speak at a time. It's why it's important to actually wait in the queue for this rather than calling out, which definitely it's basic concept like raising your hand in school. So you just graduated. I can definitely attest to that. One thing I'm hearing out there, hearing the frustration of condos. I personally would go because I don't live there. I live down in Vista, down very edge. I can definitely understand the frustration in terms of paying your water bill and then having these less than ideal conditions. I think that if there's points where it's individual housing for pipes, if it's that problem, it's not the common pipe, then yeah, maybe it is the homeowner's responsibility. However, there are also some little fixes that you can take. Why not put like filtration systems on your faucets? That can be something. That can be a system that it's something that my family does on our shower because of the light. It's yes, it's gonna be more money, but maybe it might be less expensive than paying to have new pipes installed. Obviously, I wouldn't know much of the issue. I don't know what it's like paying water bills. I'm still living under the roof with my parents. But there are definitely some easy fixes. I can definitely say, like the water filtration systems you can put directly on the faucet, as I explained. There's definitely seen a lot of those. They definitely do exist. There may be something you can definitely probably buy some on Amazon or something like that, and it'd be a lot cheaper than having to replace your entire water system, it would definitely gets a lot of that out. So you won't have as much of a problem.
Thank you. Okay, next.
I live in Oakridge condos. I've been there for 12 years. I thought I was very blessed because I would hear about the brown water and the pink water and the gray water, and I had clear water until the development of Laurel Ridge Townhomes started. And then lo and behold, I had the brown water and the pink water. And about 2 years ago, I invested in a whole house water filtration system for my own health because I was starting to develop some issues. But what I don't understand, to be honest with you, is reading back, I guess Mr. Pine originally owned our water district system, and then the town owned it. And when I was feeling blessed that I didn't have that brown and pink water, all my neighbors did. So I don't understand how the development of 47 new units was approved, that a child care center was approved, that I know I have a neighbor who went around and collected almost everybody's signature to not have the car wash put in, and I understand that's approved. I just don't understand how the town approved all this new development on an already dysfunctional system.
Let's keep the questions to what, so we have more slides to go through, and then if there's any other questions on other topics later, we could just address those. Did you have a question? Specific to what?
No, I just was thinking, it's the first time that I hear that the water comes in, and because of the pipes, we have a problem. It's the first time that I hear something like that. So it means that our pipes are not working. Okay. Why? What kind of pipes do we have? Who installed those pipes? I don't get it. Yeah. I mean, I've never heard, oh, you have problems with that or with whatever. Because of the pipes. So change your what? I'm sorry, I am not an engineer, but what are those pipes made of?
So yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Bill answered that before. So Bill, maybe
pretty much every home in America that has copper pipes before 1887, the copper was held together with sod. Every home. I mean, my home at my house. I mean.
So you also have a problem?
I don't have a problem because I love the water.
So I can also give you an example of what I went through on a house purchase. I bought a house. As part of the sale, the seller is required to test the water. So the water came back with coliform and with lead. So what they did was they shocked the well with chlorine to kill the coliform. And then they removed the fixture, an old fixture. It's a house that was built, it was built in the 50s, but then upgraded in the early 80s. They removed that fixture, replaced it, ran another test, and it was fine. But that's what they had to do in order to complete the sale to me.
So conclusion?
So the copper pipes, the fittings that hold the pipes together, are solid, right?
Okay.
That's what seals them, right? That solid is a combination of lead and tin.
So conclusion, we have to change our pipes.
No. We do it. We add hardness to the water. Pipes, okay? The pipes are all coated with a layer of calcium carbonate, which prevents the water from touching the metal. That's how it is.
That's why the water's very hot.
That's why the water's hard.
Okay. Can I speak? Thank you. I just want to say you gave a very good rundown on that. Having been a plumber back in the 80s, back in the 80s and the 70s, it was 50-50 sod. Now it's 95.5, but like you said, that was 87. What are you gonna do? Run the water before you use it. That's simple as that. I've been doing that since I lived in the city. You think it was any different? It's the same deal. I got lead in the solid. You know, I'm just saying, let's get the water treatment situation good. I didn't think there was a lead issue other than stagnant water sitting in your pipes. So that's what I'm saying. I don't want to get off the beam and go, I'm here, I want to see what we're going to do to improve it. You know, the quality of the water. Thank you.
So just to get back to this, so these are some of the results we got back, including the additional, so we were required to measure 10 locations, we measured in 11. There's a backlog on testing because what's happening is the lab that we're using, they are testing for many schools.
There's a regulation with schools and state of the art. All the schools are collecting lead and copper samples.
At each fixture.
At each fixture in all of the school, or all of the labs are varied. Like the fact that you were able to get, you paid for turnaround, that's what happened. You paid extra to have it turned around. We asked the lab, and they said the best we can turn it around is that's New York State. The problem, your lab is a Connecticut lab. In New York State is where they're doing it right now. So the New York State labs are varied.
All right, so I'll move on here. Sodium, that's another issue. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. So I understand the diagram that you're doing, the upgrades and everything like that, as far as new filters being put in.
That's existing.
That's existing.
We didn't get to what's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I want to know is, with all this new development going on, like she said, the car wash, is this capable of handling that?
So I wasn't involved with that decision. The planning board made that decision. I looked at the information presented at the planning board.
Right.
It was based on capacities. The car wash is supposed to use very minimal water. Again, I'm basing this on the engineering reports that were presented to the planning board.
And when we were not involved.
Right, so can blank that out.
So basically,
So just so you know, the plant, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but the plant is rated for 80,000 gallons per
day.
And it was designed for 4 condos. The 4th condo was in the original approval, and that's why they were allowed to do what they did. It was already approved.
So we're running at about 50 to 50 something.
47.
So our flow rate now is about 50,000 gallons per day.
okay.
So we're still below the 80,000.
More people off home and everything.
Yeah, so I share those numbers with you, right? So we ran some numbers with COVID, it's been increased quite a bit. There wasn't an uptick, but it wasn't drastic.
I think it was about 5,000 gallons.
Yeah.
For the year.
Okay, so
extra.
we went from like 50 to 55,000. You can be that home. Okay, sodium. So the guidance, this is guidance from the New York State Department of Health, is that when you have more than 20 milligrams per liter, people on severely restricted sodium diets should not drink the water. People on if it's greater than 270 milligrams, people that are on a moderately restricted sodium diet should drink the water. The current sodium levels leaving the plant is about 100 milligrams per liter. And that has been pretty consistent. It's been in the 90s to 100 range every time we test. Hardness, the latest measurement is 126 milligrams per liter, which is considered moderately hard. And as you know, we do, you know, the water is hard coming in. We take out the iron and manganese as much as possible. But with some of the treatment that we do, it does reintroduce some hardness back into the water. The projects that we've tackled. So we had trimethylamethanes, which were found in small amounts in the water in 2016. They have been removed, and part of it, correct me if I'm wrong again, Bill or Tyler, but this was due to stagnant water, primarily.
Now it's due to the bromoform, the bromides came out of nowhere and were all of a sudden in the raw water. Never had bromides before, and that in 2017, 16, into 16, the raw water developed some bromides in the water, Bromides are usually associated with salt water, but we don't have a treatment to remove the bromides. But when bromides are chlorinated, they form disinfection byproducts. There's 4 of them. 3 of them are bromide based, 1 of them is carbon based. The bromides were there for about a year and a half, and then they started to go away. And when they did, the THM levels went down.
Right.
And that happened again.
Yeah, I think it was probably associated with the salting road salt.
So it was a
Yeah, so it could happen again. And that's one of the reasons in the PFOA design, the carbon is being sized to handle the THMs. So it's being oversized. So it's going to do both. Carbon removes the disinfection byproducts and the precursors. So the carbon will do both PFASs and the THMs. Whereas before we had designed an aeration system which would have done the same thing, but there's no sense. We already need to put the granular activated carbon in to remove the PFASs. So it just makes sense just to make those filters bigger and not spend the money on the aeration system. We can, in the future, we can always go back and add the aeration system, because it's a very effective means to remove the THMs, but we believe that the granular activated carbon will solve that.
But what we did with this project, we put in a SCADA system and chemical feed systems that will also help with preventing the THMs. So that was part of a grant that was approved in December 2019, and we expect to get reimbursement this year sometime. Just touching base, we had an issue with electrical supply with NYSEG and the Pound Ridge 455 circuit. They had put in recloser units in 2020 to minimize the duration of outages that were occurring, mainly across the border in Pound Ridge as a result of trees falling on the lines. When they put those in, they were oversensitive, and so whenever a branch would hit a wire, it would take out the power, and then it would come back on 6 seconds later. So there was a lot of that going on. We asked NYSEG to look into that. They put in recording equipment at the water plant and at the Vista Fire Department. They ended up making adjustments on the reclosers in August of 2020, and things got a lot better.
Have you talked about the PFASs yet?
No, we're getting to that, yeah. So tree trimming was completed, the initial phase of tree trimming August 2020. We had a meeting with the district back on October 29th, where NYSEG presented their resiliency project, which is what's going on now. They started that in May, and that's ongoing. That's where they're bringing in a redundant circuit, so that if that Pound Ridge circuit that comes up from the south goes out, there's going to be a circuit coming in from the north that'll feed Vista, and they can turn that circuit on fairly quickly. The flush hydrants, yes. So I'll speed through this. So we talked about it already. Basically, we did this to eliminate the sediment that's been collected over the years in the distribution system. And in fact, I think there's a notice that's going out for the next one, which is next week.
Correct.
So I'll make sure to get that out on email and all that.
How many were there? There was like 47 dead ends, right?
Yeah, 40-something valves, I forget now. And 2 hydrants were upgraded to 4.
It was virtually impossible to flush the entire system before they put those valves in. You couldn't get flushing velocity, which is what you need to scour the pipe to get the debris that settled out. We had a few hydrants that we could flush on, but flushing the dead ends really was what has been needed for a very long time.
And I think when you guys did the first flushing of those dead ends after introducing the valves, there was a lot of stuff that came out of it.
Yeah, they run for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And like Dan said, those ones run for maybe 3 or 4 minutes before turning clear.
Right. Okay. So PFAS, so we talked a little bit about this. The corrective action plan was delivered to the Department of Health. They had requested that before the end of May. It was delivered. Robert Flores worked on it primarily, and Robert actually, maybe I'll have to talk about this. He actually worked on, there was a major PFAS issue in Hoosick Falls. where a similar system, it's gone in already, right? It's been in operation since 2016. Since 2016, but they had higher levels of PFAS than we have here. And so they went ahead and put in the same system. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Robert? Sure. About the mask, maybe, yeah. You can see, the mic will pick you up here, so. Okay. Yeah.
Is that in 2020 or 2021?
Oh, sorry, 2021. Sorry, I'll make that correction.
Yeah, so as Tony was mentioning, in 2015, 2016.
No? Maybe, yes. Sure, yeah.
Robert Flores, the engineer. So like as Tony was saying, in 2015, 2016, we were having these kind of meetings in the village of Hoosick Falls. And at that point, Hoosick Falls and Middleburg, not Middleburg, Newburgh, if you Google that, you'll find a lot of reading material. It was all new to everybody. We had, the governor's eyes, St. Cobain, multinational companies on the hook for pay for stuff. Our entire village didn't know what to do. Anyway, so we had to come up with a solution for that. So everything you've been going through here, they went through, 4 or 5 years ago. And because of what happens in Hoosick Falls and Newburgh, that's where the state went out there and tested roughly 200 water supplies in the state. And because they found PFAS scattered throughout in areas where there was no reason to believe there would be contamination, that's why they implemented the rule that took an effect this year, where you had everybody in the state had to sample for the 4 times, once before. In Hoosick Falls, their well field is located right next to St. Cobain, and who was lucky enough to buy the facility from Honeywell. So there was an industrial facility that was directly tied, contaminated their well field. So there was a direct connection. Here, we're all kind of throwing your arms up as to why do you have high levels of PFAS. But that's
the PFOS is the firefighting foam, and we have found that there's a lot of contamination around firehouses.
The fire trucks empty into our little pond. Is that not?
No, it has to be a foam generator truck.
Okay.
right. So what the result of sampling throughout the state, and now all 50 states have done it, so there's a lot more data. In 2015, 16, we're working in the blind though, because we didn't know exactly what would work and what we were up to. But back then, actually, there was no MCL for PFAS, right? There was an advisory limit of 200 from the EPA, but there was no regulation. So the first time somebody said, I think this stuff is giving us cancer, I was there and the mayor got that phone call. He's like, well, what do I do with this? And he called the Department of Health, and the Department of Health said, well, we have no limit for PFAS. In their case, it was PFOA, very specific. So you have no problem, don't worry about it. So which turned out to be a really bad recommendation. So as the story progressed, this stuff is bad, and a little bit is bad, and that's why the regulations were passed. And it was determined that 10 parts per trillion is the limit. And actually, let's just take another step back. In 2015-16, when we were dealing with Hoosick Falls, the labs could only test down to 20, right? So the advisory limit of 200 was loosely based on the fact that the labs could only test 200 parts per trillion. So then when the labs were able to develop, because of greater demand leads to greater accuracy, down to 2 parts per trillion, and then it became, well, let's make it 7. But in the case of Hoosick Falls, right, like we just said, their limits were, the raw water was coming in at 700, above 700. You have 16, I think it's the highest reported. So, and they have microfiltration, brand new water plant. They won awards for best tasting water, all kinds of things. Okay, so no guidance from the health department. But it became obvious this stuff, so we did a little research, it showed up in Ohio, it showed up in West Virginia, this stuff was cancer causing bad stuff. So, you know, there's a lot of back and forth as to the details, but basically, at least there was a problem. There was somebody to pay for it, which was the St. Cobain. They said, well, whatever it takes, do it, right? So, and health department said, I don't care what it takes, get rid of it. And it wasn't 10 parts per million, that's gotta be non-detect. It's gotta be non-detect by December 31st. So that's what we walked into. So we called Calgon and said, what do you have on site? They had a 10-foot unit, so ship it. And again, we had St. Cobain there as the bank. So there was somebody to pay for the stuff. So they shipped a 10-foot carbon unit, filled it, and we hired a contractor, Time Materials. In 2 months, which happened to be January, February, we had a temporary system running. And what came out of the temporary system was non-detect. And right now we're talking 2 parts per trillion, which we kind of filled up kind of randomly, but we had no idea when we were sampling if that was even going to be, well, you know, surely you can make a small mistake and you know, you get a trillion in there somehow, right? And we're being held to the standard of 0 parts per trillion into the amount. But there was sampling that was done. People were talking earlier about sampling more. So there, we put the temporary unit in place, which happened to be about the half of the size we really needed, but that's what was available that day, and that's what we took. And we sampled every single day. And it takes about 30 days to get back then, about 30 days to get a sampling result. So, you know, it was about a 30-day lag to get the results. But we sampled every day. We sampled what came out of the water plant, what came, there was the highway garage was the first customer, so that was a convenient place to sample places throughout the village. And, you know, after a year worth of continuous sampling, you kind of start to trust the numbers. So if you get 5 parts per trillion, it really is 5 parts per trillion. It's not a mistake. You really have that stuff. Anyway, so the temporary system was put in place. In the meantime, we ordered the correct size one, designed the upgrade to the plant.
Does this timeline relate to a plan that's still in place for us, or how can I relate this?
So this, I'll just give you background, but basically one of the things that Tony mentioned earlier is that the health department has since decided, okay, 10 is our limit. And then they also said, okay, just because we have higher than 10, don't panic. We have basically 2 to 3 years to implement a solution. You don't have to do the Hoosick Falls, right? When I showed up the Hoosick Falls, it was immediately everybody, you know, don't use the water, shower should be less than 2 minutes, all kinds of stuff. You know, if you had a pool, drain it, all this stuff, you know, it's basically don't touch it. So after going through the experience of Hoosick Falls, they kind of backed off and said, okay, there's a problem. It needs to be fixed, but it doesn't have to be fixed with your hair on fire. And that's basically the way the regulations are written. And that's the process you're in right now.
So jumping back, parts is the lowest MCL in the country, New York State.
Correct. I think Connecticut is 30 or something.
Connecticut's actually
12,
70 stuff?
16.
We're 5 slightly.
We're 5 parts per trillion.
Okay, so let's jump back to this. Anyone have a question for Robert? So we'll just move on. Thanks, Robert. Yeah. So the corrective action requires the installation of GAC with granular activated carbon filtration. So we're looking at 2 of these vessels. They're 16 foot tall, 8 foot wide, and that's going to require expanding the water plant to house those 2 units. The next section here, any questions on PFAS? And we'll go past that if there aren't any.
Do you want to just say that we're investigating, litigating with DuPont because they're responsible?
There is, yes. There is a litigation effort ongoing because it's DuPont and several other companies.
DuPont and 3M invented this chemical and dispersed it in the environment and never told the EPA, and they knew the health effects when they did it. And they've lost multiple cases. The attorney that we're dealing with just won a $600 million litigation against them for our water company. So
Is that here?
we're
part of that litigation.
We're going to sue DuPont because they're responsible and have to try to recapture all the costs for the filtration and whatever has to be paid for. That, I mean, the state, you're getting money. You may be getting money from
Is that
federal.
enforcement?
Excuse me.
Is that?
It's just started. Just started.
Any other questions? You step up to the mic. No? Okay. I'll try to run through this quick. So these are, I've been working with Tyler, coming up with what else do we need, right? What do we need to do? So these are items that are either completed or in process. So we talked about the GAC filtration. We're going to take advantage of having that new building to incorporate some additional upgrades. Chemical storage, the addition of a second high volume pump would be placed into that building. There's a strong push from.
Explain.
A second job.
Second building. I don't think a lot of people know.
Okay, the second idea, I know I went quickly through that. So the second building, it's actually an extension to this is the existing building, this is an overhead shop. So it's that line there, that square shape. That's the extension of the existing water plant. And
there's no room.
Sorry?
There's no room in the existing water plant.
Yeah, it's an expansion, yeah. There's no room in the existing water plant. It's already crowded in there.
The left.
The left, yeah. The square on the left, where the numbers are that you can't read. Yeah, that's a drawing, a schematic, which I think you have. Did you bring a drawing, Robert? I don't know if that's any better than this, but maybe you can hold that up.
No, it's not really bad.
It's not, okay, don't worry about it. Anybody wants to walk up and look at it. Yeah, if you want to walk up to it later on, you can get a closer look. But basically, it's expanding the pump over, the building over to the north side, I guess, the north side. And placing those two vessels in there.
Adding a second jockey pump, adding a second high volume pump.
Correct.
That way everything has redundancy. So
Everything will be
So that
redundant.
way everything has redundancy. Instead of having one jockey pump, two boosters, one high volume, you have two.
Yep. So that's some of what's in here. So, well, that's the process that may take a couple of years. So we're working on expediting that.
We submitted.
No.
We submitted the engineering report to the health.
Correct, end of May.
Have
not. No. I've been calling them every once in a while, so they, we're pushing to see if we can get it.
Are we ready for?
Yeah, so we did apply through Congressman Maloney's office. There were earmarks through the budget process that weren't available the past few years. Now they are, potentially. And the Oakridge application got accepted. So it's one of 10 projects in Congressman Maloney's district that got approved. So if you go to his website, I put in for $1.8 million, and they approved that.
It just has to make it through the budget process.
Yes, make it through the budget. But I asked them, well, what does that mean? Does that mean we're going to get the money? They said, unless there's any games being played by Congress and government shutdowns, et cetera, we're going to get that money, is what I've been told.
And it's the only one in New York. It's the only one in New York State.
Can you email it to us? Yeah. Are you on the email distribution for Oakridge?
No, he's just our district.
There's an email distribution for Oakridge. If you go to the town website, I can get that information out there again. I would suggest everyone sign up, go to the town website, sign up for Oakridge Gmail, or reach out to me. My email address is on the website. I can send you the links to the, or you can Google it. If you Google Congressman Maloney Oakridge, you'll probably go right to the link. I gotta put my glasses on. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay. So there. No, I'm not. So I'm not answering questions on Zoom right now. We will, anyone that's got their hands up, we will get to you. I just want to finish the presentation. So hang in there. But yeah, so these are some of the things, but yeah, the Congressman Maloney thing, I can get that information to you if you want it, or if you Google it, you'll find it. We also have one through Senator Schumer's office. They actually found out that we had applied to Congressman Maloney, and they got in touch with me to say, hey, we have this, you can come through us as well. So we gave basically 2 days to fill out the application. And I submitted that, and that's on Senator Schumer's website also. For Oakridge and for work that we have to do with Wild Oak Sewer as well. So that's a larger amount we submitted for it. And then whatever we get from assuming we get the federal money, this costs a little more, the difference will be, we're going to go after that through WIA grants, which is the New York State Environmental Facilities Support. They have this WIA means Water Infrastructure and Improvement Act, which is how we paid for 60% of the Triangle Methods project. We're doing the same for the gap filtration. So that's the plan there. Yeah, so I'm not going to go through the sand filter. We completed the inspection and some servicing. We actually have the actual new media that's got to go in. That's going to go in for both the sand filter and for the mixed media, correct?
Just the green sand filters.
Just the green sand? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, I was at the plant this morning, so I saw the bags
sand there, yep.
Media. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Most important, and again, I worked with Tyler on this, so thanks to Tyler for putting this together. The water plant, we're looking at a new chlorine and pH analyzer. The current one has been rebuilt several times. It's time for a new one. The variable frequency drive upgrades that are used to operate the pumps, they're very old. I guess when we install these new pumps with the GAC system, they're going to come with new VFDs. I'm assuming.
Correct. They should, right?
Yeah, because we did that for
yes, for the jockey pump. So all the water, the jockey pump with the 2 booster pumps. That's a combination of water and wastewater.
Correct, yeah.
The VFD upgrade, it's a combination of both.
Right. Now, specific to the wastewater plant, we need a new boiler for heating the interior of the plant. That boiler is pretty old, needs to be replaced. Same thing, the VFD upgrades. The new headwork screen, the screen is what the wastewater hits first, and it removes all the bulk items that come in, right?
Yeah, what's that?
Do we want to do a redundant screen?
New and redundant screen. It removes the grit, heavy solids, rocks, things like that would damage downstream equipment like pumps and things like that in a wastewater plant.
Long term, not as urgent. The water treatment plant automation of backwash valves. So these are whenever they do daily backwashes, right?
Correct.
And right now it's a manual process. You have to turn a bunch of valves, run high pressure pumps to basically backwash the filters. And we're looking to automate that in the future. So it's all done through the SCADA system, right?
Yes.
Okay. The wastewater pump, these are, I'm not going to go into details, but it's the biological contactor, microfiltration, UV disinfection is being recommended in place of chlorine, which is used today to disinfect the wastewater that once it goes out, right? Clarifier, refabricating, and relocating the Equidine pump station control. So we had an issue with that Equidine pump station. This was the one that failed. The pumps didn't kick on, so the well filled with wastewater. It caused some toilets to not flush with the proper flow rate. We had somebody on site for because somebody, Dan was on site for something else and
Yeah.
he was alerting to that, so we got it in time, so it didn't cause any major wastewater spillage. And we were able to we had to bring in a pump truck, or a vacuum truck to vacuum out the well. And then bypass the control panels were damaged with because the control panels were on the ground. So what we're doing is we're putting in new control panels above ground, so this doesn't happen again. And we just approved the work at last Monday's town board meeting for this, so that should be.
Sounds good. Yeah.
It's being scheduled, yeah. So that's that.
So what's part of the 2-year project? That or the 74, what?
The 2-year, you mean the PFAS?
That you're gonna build a big thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, what exactly encompasses that as opposed to what you just showed?
Yeah, what I just showed are things that we need to come up with a plan to determine when we're gonna do that.
So it should be.
That's not included, no. Some of what like the booster, the additional booster pump.
Everything in the new building is included.
The automation of backlash valves, all the redundant pumps.
Yeah.
Two slides, I want to differentiate for people what's what.
Yeah.
So everybody knows what's what.
Let me just take this off of screen share. Okay. Okay, so I think what I'll do next is, I have a few people online that have their hands raised, so I'm gonna give them an opportunity to ask a question. And I think, Joe, this will, hold on a second. I should be able to, how do I get this, all right, so I'm going to ask Marjorie Samuels to unmute. Marjorie Samuels.
Hello?
Yes, hi Marjorie. Go ahead.
This is not Audrey. This is Simone O'Connor.
Oh, hi Simone.
Hey, Tony. I have a question. Thank you. I don't know how, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I first appreciate the Zooming attempt today. It was really kind of brutal on this end of things. A lot got muffled. I'm just telling you this for future reference, but I really appreciated it. This is what I want to know. The water's been bad for so long. Why would it hurt to get a second opinion? We've had this same company, I don't mean to insult anyone, for a long time while the water's been bad. So why not put bids out for another company and see what they would have to offer? So that's my first question. My second question is that somebody touched on it before, speaking about the continued building while using a system that's already taxed and sorely ineffective. I know that the planning board passed this. I know Richard Sclaren was on it. I was hoping he could talk a little bit about why they approved it. But at this point, I always believe in going forward. Why isn't the town board issuing a stop order until we figure out how to handle this situation in a better way? That's my second question. My third is, I'm so disappointed to hear, and I recently had my mother's water tested. About the comment, if you're on a low sodium diet, perhaps you shouldn't drink your own water. It's so sad if you really think about that in your head, that you can't drink your tap water that you pay an extra bill for if you're on a low sodium diet. It's just not okay. Not for my mom, who's 83, not for the babies that live there, and just in general, the humans that are trying to work and pay their bills and taxes. It's so unacceptable. I've been screaming from the rooftop about this. And while I appreciate, and I've told you this before, Tony, so much that you've gotten involved, and I know you haven't been in this from the beginning, so I do appreciate it. This history lesson tonight was great for people who didn't know about it, but we're not scientists, and a lot of it went really over my head, and I'm not a stupid person. And I think what people want to hear is just, kind of just simply, when will it be safe to drink their own water? Period, the end. When will our water be safe to drink? Simple question. I just would love an answer to those 3 items. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've had discussions with the Department of Health. The water does meet Part 5 of the New York State Sanitary Code, which means it's potable. You can drink it. I actually had a glass of it today at the plant. And
please, I invite you to come to my mother's, and I'll show you the pictures of it as you drink it.
So let me ask you a question. I know you posted on social media a picture of the toilet tank that holds the water.
That's one of them. I have pictures of the pink water as well.
Pink water, hopefully that is not going to happen again, right? That was a problem with the flow meter that went bad, and we fixed that. Okay, but that's one issue. So that issue is resolved. Hopefully it won't happen again. And we're hoping to put, we're actually testing sodium permanganate, potentially as a replacement for potassium permanganate.
Before COVID, we proposed a pilot program to change from potassium permanganate to sodium permanganate. The difference between the two is potassium permanganate, we have to mix at the plant. It's a very, very fine powder. It's difficult and it's dangerous.
Right.
The sodium permanganate you can buy pre-mixed in a drum, and it actually has better oxidation qualities.
Right.
It oxidizes better. The health department wants us to do a pilot with it to see if it affects the sodium that's in the water. Most of the sodium that's in the water is in the raw water.
Right.
It's in the well water, so it's already there before we even get it. And that's probably
it's in the raw water.
It's in the well water. So it's probably from salting roads and water softeners that discharge into septic systems.
Right. So that, yes.
And to remove sodium, we would have to install reverse osmosis.
Right.
Okay? For every gallon of water you make, you backwash 2 with a reverse osmosis.
Right.
It's a very expensive process. You can certainly look into it. It's a very good treatment. I mean, it works, but it's expensive to install. And it's very expensive to operate.
When I spoke to the water company that we went to inquire about having my mother's water tested privately, they were not surprised. They said, "Oh, God, everyone around here knows about Oakridge water." So that goes back to my question. Why are we sticking with a company that for so long has not helped fix the situation? Or at the very least, why are we not getting second opinions?
So let me get into discuss that a little bit. So first of all, when the plant was taken over by the town, it was not functional, right? So Delaware did design the current system. DRI were not around back then. I think you guys are like the 4th operator.
2009.
I'm sorry?
2009.
2009 is when you came into the picture. Right.
Aquarian Water Company was the first.
Aquarian, it was Union.
No, it was Aquarian, and well, first it was it was John Muir, which
Allied.
Right.
and then it was Aquarium.
Right.
United.
United was United Water. And then BRI.
Right.
And then BRI, yeah. So BRI, you know, if you go back to before they came on, there's probably a good reason why those other folks are not here operating the plant. I think they've done quite a bit. We've worked very well together with them. Yeah, we could bring in somebody else. Are you gonna get better service? Who knows? I don't know.
Well, we won't know unless you put out a bid or get a second opinion so we can see if whatever the plan is going forward, that it's a good plan, it's a solid plan, and that there's not a better plan. Now,
Right.
perhaps Delaware is giving you the plan that you have said we can afford. I don't know. I'm not privy to that.
It's the plan that they gave us for PFAS is the plan that the health department, I spoke to them directly, is being considered for, it's the only approved plan currently by New York State Department of Health. There are others that are being tested because other places that have this issue cannot support a large installation like ours. But now they have to prove that ion exchange is one of them. That's what North Salem is. I spoke to the supervisor there, Warren Lucas. That's what he's looking to do for one of his web districts that has the same issue. They don't have the room for GAP.
I would predict that they'll be putting GAP in.
According to, yeah, the conversation I had with the Department of Health, it's not approved. Ion exchange is not approved. And yeah, and I know GAC
Gets you to non-detect.
It gets to non-detect, but it also treats other chemicals,
Yeah.
other substances that are not currently being monitored by the health department. So I think
I would like to see us do better, not just meet the minimum requirement. These people have suffered for so long at this condominium. My mother's lived there for almost 20 years, 2 decades, and she cannot drink her water. And now, you know, being told, well, if you're on a low sodium diet, you know, you can't have it. It's crazy to me. It's crazy talk. It's 2021, Westchester County, one of the richest counties in the country. I'm floored by it. When will these people be able to drink this water, whether they're on a low sodium diet or no diet?
yeah, I've spoken to people who drink the water. I mean, I don't know, maybe showing hands, who drinks your water.
I can't hear whatever's happening.
Yeah.
Would you drink our water?
I drank it this morning, actually.
It's absolutely gross. I've drank it. It's disgusting. It's absolutely gross, Tony. It's great because there are a lot of people that drink, like when you were little, like mud pies. That doesn't mean that it's good. My mother was hospitalized, and you know that, in the emergency room because she had liquids coming out of her that they said was caused by bacteria in the water. This is a class action lawsuit waiting to happen. I'm just trying to avoid that because I also pay taxes here. I just want these poor people, including my mother, including myself, when I'm there every day, lugging water up to her house, I want them to have clean water. It's fair. I don't know how else to beg for water for everyone.
Well, so that's the goal. So, I mean, we definitely want to make sure that the water is the best possible quality it can be. Considering what it comes out of the ground as and what it's, you know, looks like when it leaves, there is significant improvement. We have processes in place. I think the GAC will, again, based on information that I've gathered not only from Delaware, but from other people I've spoken to, will provide a significant improvement in water taste, water clarity. I mean, it's pretty clear now based on what I saw today. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, we can always get a second opinion from elsewhere. You know, it's up to the homeowners association if they want to do that. I know we work on, Erica and I, and Robin, you were involved, we worked on I actually drafted the original copy of what was going out to be an engineering study, an independent engineering study. And then Erica revised it.
Why not put a stop order on the building until we get a grip on how we're proceeding?
Yeah. So, I mean, those are certainly options, you know, if the HOA is open to doing something like that, we can certainly.
We're not paying for it.
I can't hear.
Yeah, so I'll share with you what our attorney said. Our attorney said that we as a municipality cannot invest money in a water district, in a district. That's, I'm just sharing,
It's our attorney, it's a special district. It's a special district. It's a governmental agency in and of itself, of which the town board are the commissioners. The homeowners that live within the boundaries are actually the ones that are responsible to pay for whatever happens to the water and the sewer system within the boundaries. No one else who lives in other places in the town that aren't within the boundaries are responsible to pay anything into the upkeep or in whatever you decide you want done at the water system, you will pay for it or get grants to help you pay for it. But the rest of the town, they can't pay for it. It's against the law.
according to our attorney, it's illegal for us to do that.
There's no, if we wanted a grant for a second thing, it has to go through the town.
That's right.
If there's a grant, I have not been able to find a grant for an engineering study. I've looked. I don't know if there's, you guys are aware. I'm sorry? I personally have not been able to identify a grant for an engineering study. And I don't know if you guys have ever come across that. They have a grants committee, Delaware Engineering does. I actually tapped into.
You have limitations because of your income.
I'm sorry?
Because of your income, you don't qualify.
Well, that's, yeah.
Need home income.
He said because of our median household income being high, there are many grants that we don't have access to.
Well, okay. Statistics on our.
Yes, I don't have them off the top of my head.
Right, but you said it's from 2010.
I have to verify that. That's, I think it's
so
2010.
And you are aware of the engagement over the town rules for higher income than over.
Right.
We definitely want, we should have that information.
The cutoff is 90,000. So
I'm telling you, we have plenty of people that don't.
no, I know, but it's the average.
There's a lot of people that.
So,
It's the average. It would be the average.
It's the average.
So if there's a grandma in, why can't they go
She's
out
the
and
one-
collect the information that we need to maintain privacy? We're paying now, right?
No, we don't. Let me explain something what we do. We don't work for you on a retainer or anything like that. What we do is we come and work on projects when we're called in. We're not your engineer. We've been working on these projects as we're called in. We're specifically a water and wastewater engineering firm. We're not a site civil. We don't compete with your town engineer. All we do is water and wastewater. So we're called in to work on projects. So like the upgrade of the treatment plant, they called us in to work on that.
Tony, I just want to say one last thing. I don't want to take up any more time. I want to thank everyone for the answer. That was an interesting answer as well. There's a lot more people on Zoom, and I would love for you to call on them as well. I don't want to hog up the time. Thank you.
I mean, we've had conversations, you and I, definitely, I know we spoke about this a month ago, you're getting a water test for your mom's place. Share it with me, and we'll continue the dialogue.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Next is, back to Marjorie. Marjorie Samuels this time. I'm gonna ask to unmute.
He said we have a town engineer. I'm not about it. Who is the town engineer and why are they involved?
They're
not water and wastewater people, they're site civil people.
They're our wetlands engineer, they're the engineer we use on the planning board. They're not.
We work for many engineering firms that don't do water and wastewater.
Marjorie Samuels, if you're on, we're asking you to unmute. Okay, we're gonna skip over Marjorie for now. Let's go to Robin Leganzowski. We're asking you to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so it's very interesting hearing the background and everything. So this water has really always been brown. Why have we just come, if this company's been in business or working for us since 2009, why are we just figuring out that they need to flush the system differently than they've been flushing it for 12 years? How is this like a revelation that's new? And in that makes me think maybe we need a second opinion. Maybe we need somebody else to look at it with different eyes.
Let me answer that question, Robin. So this is my 4th year doing this. The first time I heard about groundwater and sediments is when we had an issue with one of the pumps, which stirred up, and it was due to an electrical, something happened. And that caused turbidity in the system that introduced sediment and groundwater into the distribution. As a result of that, we sat down and figured out how do we prevent this if it happens again. And the conclusion we came to is the valve installations, and that's what's being done. So.
Okay, so I mean, this is on you, but so you think that people have just not complained about it? They just sucked it up for all these years because they literally have always had brown water. It's ruined laundry.
Yes.
And all of that. So did nobody mention it before? I'm asking a serious question. Is that really like no one complained?
I don't know. I can't speak to what happened
When we
before.
did the upgrade, we recommended to do work on the distribution system, and there was no money.
When was that?
2000. We finished in 2000. Started in 2004 and in 2009.
Okay.
Okay, so what did we spend? Like, I remember our common charges went up like $100 a month. What was that for? That was a big project, and it was about 10 years ago, I think. What was that for?
Well, that's not a question to the town. Common charges is the condominium.
No. It was part of the water system. We had to put in a new tank or something. Was it just like a normal expense that we all had to foot the bill? Because I thought that was fixing the problem like 10 years ago.
Yeah, Robin, I don't know. Mike Lobardo's here, he doesn't know either. But
She's saying it's the bond.
She said it was common charges.
Yeah, we all had to have everyone's common charges went up. If these guys have been around since 2009, I would think that they were the ones that, whatever it was. I actually thought I knew what it was, but now I'm not understanding. I thought they put in a 6th well or something like that, but we never used it or something.
Yeah, I can't answer that, Rob, so I don't know where that came from. If you have documentation to show that, Bill, and if it came from the town, I can look into it.
Yeah, I've heard it discussed before, so I guess someone must know that's not, I don't know. Okay, so basically we had no money, so we never upgraded the system, and it's just gotten worse all these years is basically the situation.
Thanks, Robin. You know how to reach me if you have any specific questions, so we can discuss it.
Yeah, that's fine. I asked my specific question.
I'm gonna try. I accidentally, I think it might have been Jeremy Zittimer. I raise your hand again, Jeremy. But we're gonna go to Ava George. Asking to unmute.
Hi.
Ava George.
That's me.
Okay.
As much as I appreciate the water issues that the residents there have been enduring, as a homeowner on Old Church Lane, I've probably spent tens of thousands of dollars on my own personal water filtration, testing, flow issues with the well. And I am appalled at what has gone on with the utility poles and the ground to sky clearing of the trees on Old Church Lane and Conant Valley in an attempt to stop the power fluctuations that are creating issues in Oakridge. So number one, I'd like to know if, I understand that you have emergency generators, backup generators, so that if the power does go out, that you are not interrupted with water. But do you have UPS systems before those generators?
So we have a generator at the plant that kicks on when the power goes out. That's what we have, and it's currently functional. As far as the work that NICEAG are doing, it's not, it'll help Oakridge, but it's not just for Oakridge. It's for a good section of South San Luis Vista area. And it's something that, you know, is needed.
No, we all know, Tony, because Rob confirmed it, that the main reason for them to be reclaiming their easement of the lines and putting up these poles and taking down massive numbers of trees was to help with the water issue in Oakridge.
Yeah, it's not just the water issue. It's a put a redundant circuit that's going to mitigate that. That circuit is exposed to a lot of trees coming up from the Pound Ridge side, and it's to mitigate and prevent outages as a result of that circuit being a troublesome circuit.
Okay, but it's clearly helping Oakridge.
It is helping Oakridge as well as many other people.
Because their pumps got burnt out or something happened when there was a power outage or a power fluctuation, correct?
It's an inconvenience now, but it's not going to last too much longer. Hopefully it'll be done. It'll be okay. Thank you.
What's an inconvenience?
Adam Wiles. Adam Wiles, asking you to unmute.
Yes, hello, it's Janissa Wiles, actually. Thank you so much again for bringing this meeting up for us. I have the pump, the sanitation pump that was approved in the last town meeting in my backyard. And I was wondering if we would be informed as to when that is going to be fixed. If does it involve trucks going into there, just so that we are able to know in advance what needs to be done, because it involves my backyard.
I didn't understand it. Can you repeat that?
Lower and slower. It'll wait till on top of.
Oh, is she on that time? Oh. Oh, is that Marjorie that was on? Just now? Oh, Marjorie, yeah. Can you repeat your question? I think you muted yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. My question is, who was in charge of hiring Nelson Tree Service?
Who was responsible for hiring Nelson Tree Service?
Yes.
NICEAG.
And
so
who is responsible for the
So is this related to the discussions here regarding the Oakridge water treatment plant?
Now, this is because I'm on Old Church Lane and I'm having a lot of issues with the Nelson Tree Service doing work that I was totally unprepared to have done.
Sorry, I'm not any NICEAG questions. If you want to, you can email me.
Because you can't hear anything.
My email is on the town board website.
You can't hear anything.
Thank you very much.
On slide 1.
Adam Wiles.
Yes, hello, this is Janissa again. Yes, my question, I was asking the question about when the pump that needs that in the last town board meeting, it was approved that a pump would be fixed. The one that was underwater and needs to be raised so that it's no longer underground. That pump is in my backyard, and I was wondering if we would be able to be informed when that work would be happening in advance of it, because if there are trucks or different things that need to go in the backyard, I just needed to know that in advance.
Yeah, so we're addressing that. Like I said, the town board approved that repair this past Monday. We're waiting on a schedule on this.
I couldn't hear, I'm sorry, that was the pump
The
station, okay.
pump transfer
Yep.
station, yeah, so we're looking into that.
When we got the quote 2 days after the event happened, and he told us it was a 3 to 4 week, because it's an emergency repair, that he could have it done. Obviously that had to go through the approval process, so it took a little bit of time.
Yeah, so we
And now it's
ended
done.
up, we got a second quote. We wanted to make sure that we were, that the price was right. We just approved it on Monday, now we're waiting on schedule. So hopefully soon. I mean, I think it's, I know we have a temporary setup right there, right now to power that pump, but we will keep you posted.
Okay, thank you, and definitely thank you for getting that part of this done. And if you could just reach out to us, I know, Tony, you have my husband's email address. If you could just email us so we can prepare and know in advance if it involves trucks being back there and such, because it impacts us.
Let's say early next week, send me an email, but I do have your contact info.
Okay, thank you.
This whole process, what I did it.
Right.
Are you gonna get this?
So let me just clarify. Yes. So for the PFAS, we have to go out to bid. It's a required by law. We have to do that. Yeah. For emergency repairs under a certain amount, we don't have to, but we still like to get multiple bids. That's what we do. Yeah.
Okay. Next we have Jeremy Zittimer. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Hi, Tony. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for taking the time to walk us through all this, and thank you to Delaware and VRI for being here. So I share the concerns that others have echoed, that everyone in Oakridge deserves potable water. Everyone, and everyone also deserves peace of mind about it. I have, if you bear with me, I'm trying to keep these questions very, very concrete, but I have a number of them that have been accumulating over the course of this meeting. So if I could just take them one at a time, if that's all right. I wanted to start by, so it seems like from what I understand from what you're saying, the bulk of the actual observed issues that residents are facing seem to be because of the pipes in the actual Oakridge units, because you've carefully confirmed that the point of entry, the point where the water leaves the town's responsibility and enters the development, that water appears to be safe. And so the bulk of the issues appear to be with the pipes. Are there any, the first question for you, there were some planned piping fixes that were mentioned on the improvement slide. Is this something that would address these actual observed issues that residents are facing that might be due to piping in their units?
No, the piping that was in the slide, that's within the water treatment plant. That's in a very crowded space. It's very hard to work in that area. That's the area where we put in the stage 1 and stage 2 filtering. So as part of the expansion of the plant, we're going to redo that piping.
Got it. Okay, I understand. So the second question is, I understand that you understand the grants landscape around this pretty well, and I'm sure that just as I at 36 Fairmount Road, it might not be appropriate for me to ask the town to fix my personal pipes, but maybe there's a grant, a home improvement grant or a HUD grant or something that could be used for that. Nevertheless, is there something that the town could apply for that would cover the piping issues in the actual Oakridge units themselves, even though that's not under the town's responsibility per se?
I personally don't know of any. Out there constantly looking around when new opportunities come up. It's certainly, if I come across something that I think may be a fit, I will look into it.
Okay, is this something that we could ask Rich Sklarin and the grants committee to spend time looking into as well?
Sure, yeah, once that committee is formed, they're not formed yet, but once they're formed, we can certainly put that on their list of to-dos.
Okay, great. So next question. So the words second opinion and independent study are both being used. I don't know if those mean the same thing. And I know you spoke, it sounds like you spoke briefly to the legality of an independent study, which is that it is not legal for the town to fund an independent study. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not legal for the town to pay the expenses associated with a district.
Out of general funds.
Right. It would be acceptable for the town to like procure a grant for it, but there are no such grants available to your knowledge. Is that correct?
If I could find a grant, we could. The grants, yes, which is what we're doing, right?
Well, sorry, the grants for an independent study of. So does the town have a grant for an independent study of the water system besides what Delaware and VRI are doing?
I'm sorry, say that again.
So the fundamental question like revolves around the town, the Oakridge residents having peace of mind about the potability of their water for all residents. And it sounds like there are concerns circulating throughout the community, whether it's from like facts or misinformation. There are concerns circulating about whether Delaware and VRI are handling this appropriately. And so I'm asking about the legality of the town like procuring a grant for an independent study of like the current handling of the water system. Is that something that the town can do? Is there a grant that's available for an independent study, or is that not really like is that just not in practice something that happens?
I have not been able to identify a grant that would pay for an engineering study.
Got it. Is there to your knowledge, like, do you have a ballpark estimate of what a quote for a study like that would look like?
What the cost would look like?
Yeah.
It depends on what they want studied, right? I mean, I've actually identified 4 different engineering companies that I was hoping to get proposals from once we determined the scope of work, but it all depends on the scope of work and what's being studied. Is it the plant? Is it including all the distribution piping?
Right.
The wastewater plant as well.
So I guess I'm sort of speaking to you and the Oakridge HOA in the same question, but I'm trying to assess what a reasonable scope for that study might look like, because this is something that, you know, like the town with a capital T cannot pay for it, but I'm sure the town residents would be potentially interested in like helping to like fundraise for this, like to support our Oakridge community members if the price tag is reasonable. And so the question is like, how do we determine the scope, like a reasonable scope for that independent study so we could arrive at a price tag? Like, is there, who would that responsibility fall to, do you think, to determine the scope of that study?
I drafted documents been additionally added to. If we want to pursue that further and finalize it, get it to these 3 or 4 engineering companies that I've identified and get quotes, then we can take the next step, whether that's fundraising by the association, the entire community.
Yeah.
Whether it's grants, you know, I'm looking for all options. I mean, it's, you know, obviously that's my #1 goal is to, you know, get us to a point where everyone is satisfied with with the water that they're drinking.
Yeah. Okay, I still have a couple more questions. Bear with me. There are like a number of valid concerns that people have raised, and I want to make sure I address. So I agree with Simone's concerns about the sodium levels. Like there are a number of, you know, there are elderly residents and other residents with various health conditions. We
really have to go. There's other people lined up here, so thank you.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Thank you. So. I was watching on Zoom, but we couldn't hear much, so I came in the middle of this. So forgive me if I got the answer to this question but missed it. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I thought that I heard on Zoom that 10 units are tested. Is that the correct number? There are water samples taken from 10 units.
Determined by the Department of Health. They're the ones that determine which units based on the years that they were built.
So. What was that?
Are you talking about the lead sampling?
Whatever was the little bottles that came out that I guess you were discussing like 20 minutes into the meeting. So I had misunderstood. Is it the DOH tells you exactly which houses to go to?
Correct.
Is there any way that we can communicate with the DOH to appeal the fact that it's been the same 10 houses, at least in my experience from being on the street when the VRI guys come in the blue shirts, they hit the same water closet on Laurel Ridge every single time for the last couple of years. It's a water closet that happens to be very clean. If you shift about 3 water closets over, you get a real beat in the Austin.
Yeah, I don't think they're drawing water from the water closets for the lead test.
Okay.
There may be something different, but the lead samples are the ones that are placed outside. Actually, the homeowner has to take them, so we
I
don't
got
take
one of those,
with the paper.
Right, yeah,
That's
I
the
got
lead
those.
sampling, yeah.
So then what are they doing when they come and hit the water closets periodically? Because that's the thing that I really see them focused in one area on.
Well, a number of things. We read water meters in the water closets. That's where the water meters are located for billing purposes.
Okay.
Flushing now, recently, probably all the flushing valves were installed in the water closets because that's where every dead end is. So off the main, the service connections go into each water closet. So we had to get into those to install those flushing valves.
Okay. One other question that was mentioned here, I think the word was bromides just showed up with regards to the keeping legal compliance for, again, I don't know if it was lead testing or PFOS.
CHS. Trihalomethane, trihalomethane is a disinfectant byproduct.
Okay.
And it's formed when bromide compounds or.
I don't need to try to explain, so I guess I'll rephrase my question. Is the lead test every 3 years the only water test that's being conducted, or how else is the water tested with what frequency?
No, so we take a series of in-house tests at the water plant every single day. And those daily tests have to be reported to county and state health departments. We have monthly coliform sample, bacteria samples in each.
And that's at the plant?
No, those are out in from, again, predetermined sites by the health department, scattered throughout the distribution system. We have to rotate, and that's a bacteria sample. And all these samples, again, are with exception to the lead samples. We collect the sample, and a lab comes and picks them up. We do not analyze any of the samples that are set out. So any of the results that you see are not being analyzed. It's all through a DOH-approved lab. There's also, I don't know where they can get access to the annual water quality report.
Yeah, so I was going to say, on our website, are you familiar with the Oakridge page on the website? Mm-hmm. If you want to go under, I think it's the water reports, or maybe the testing process page. The test plans are identified. There's a test plan document that specifies exactly all the tests and when they're performed.
The frequency. Okay.
Yeah.
And then in-house
the water quality reports as well.
In-house daily tests consist of pH, temperature, iron, manganese, fluorine residual. That's what's being tested every single day in the treatment plant. Yes.
Okay, cool. And then one last question on the flip side, the PFOS, I believe it was. I think you called it the fire foam contaminant. So I know that we have the firehouse close. Was the implication that there could be some contamination from the firehouse that's across 123? And so, just for my own knowledge, how does that contamination from the firehouse happen? Is it stuff just leaks into the ground and?
If there's ever a fire, they've used foam. We actually asked them. They haven't used foam in many years.
Right.
When they're doing testing, right? They may be putting out a fire in the parking lot.
So it's just hits the ground, seeps in groundwater. That's it at some point. Okay. And so
and they're victims too because they didn't know.
Oh yeah.
Was a person.
Makes sense. So, are there any chemicals that are run out of the car wash that's closer to the Oakridge Water District than the firehouse that can contaminate the groundwater in the same way? And if so, what are we doing to test that?
I think they capture all that water, right?
Is the new car wash you're talking about?
Yeah.
Again? So that's supposed to have like a closed system where they collect whatever is drained. It goes through sand filters, I believe.
Okay.
And then what comes out is very little of what went in.
They probably reuse a lot of water.
They recycle the water, but then they have regular visits by a company that comes and takes whatever's collected.
Right. Okay.
And they take it out. That question.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think we have one more person on Zoom. That is Emma Jerome, you're next.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, hi, thank you. Sorry, this is all new to me, and I did join a little bit late, so I apologize for that. I am a renter in the Oakridge condos for about a year now, a little over a year. And I mean, like, this is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. I think this town is gorgeous. And but once I moved in, I started meeting all the neighbors, and the first thing out of everybody's mouths was, oh, welcome, don't drink the water. Don't drink, like, even with the Brita, don't drink the water, and like, don't cook with it. And it was a bit shocking. And I do have 2 senior dogs who also need a lot of water every day. And one is a cancer survivor already. And I guess, and I apologize if this is like a very silly question, but I don't really understand all these numbers. This is not anything I've ever had to deal with before. And I'd like to know, like, bottom line, how safe is the water? Is this truly something that I should never be touching, really?
So again, the water, oversight of the water comes from the Department of Health. We do testing on a regular basis. DRI does. They submit those results to the Department of Health. If there was an issue with the water, they would provide what do they call it?
Well, non-compliance violation. But the health department also comes and collects their own samples. Right. I think you were on the email. They come and do site inspections, and they take their own samples as well. Right. So they're not just relying on us. They,
How often do they do that?
Quarterly for water.
And they do an inspection, not only of the water, but of the systems that are in place also. Isn't that the email that we just got recently, where they wanted to schedule?
Yeah, water and wastewater. I mean, they'll come and they inspect the entire facility, equipment.
Yeah.
They'll check our records, documents, all that, collect their own samples, and yep.
Yeah. So hopefully, the question.
Should I truly not be drinking this water at all? Is my question. Is this water safe to drink, or is it not?
I've spoken to people there who do drink it. I've spoken to people who have filtration systems. They never see a problem with the water because there is additional filtration, especially when we had some of these issues like with the pink water, which gets filtered out by their filtration system. And they consume the water.
Okay, thank you.
Can did she drink the water?
You would not legally be allowed to distribute the water if I would be arrested.
Right.
As the operator, designated operator in charge, my license.
Yeah.
I signed the report. That's I'm liable, so therefore I place my faith in the quality of the water.
Right.
Otherwise, we would not be signing the.
So would you drink the water?
Report, yes.
Okay.
Come to the client, I will drink it.
I was there this morning to take some pictures that I used for the presentation. I saw the water flowing in your office and I grabbed it up and I had some. But yeah, I actually brought, in case anyone's interested, what the raw water looks like and what the clean water looks like once it goes past the processing. So the raw water, it's been sitting in that jug since this morning. You can see the sediment, I guess the iron and manganese settle at the bottom. But in the other one, you don't see that. So if you want to, feel free to take a look at it.
Tony, let me say something about the sodium and the chloride. Sodium and chloride pollution in groundwater is probably the hardest contaminant to remove. And it's throughout New York State. Wells are the amount of sodium and chloride entering aquifers all over the state is it's a big problem. Right. I mean, it's statewide. If you live near an interstate or a highway, your wells are contaminated with sodium and chloride, and it's very difficult to remove. Reverse osmosis is the only practical way, and that's just way. I mean, there's a reason that they don't treat for it. Right. I don't know what they're going to do with it, because if you look at it every year, it keeps going up throughout the state. Right. It's not something just with Oakridge; it's every water supply. So I think it's the most difficult pollution problem to solve.
I think they have issues, they're blaming it on the road salt over the Meadows at West River.
Yeah, well, it's road salt, it's also water softeners, because people have water softeners, and they over backwash them, and so they'll backwash them once a day or once a week, and all they're doing is sending that salt into their septic systems, and a septic system does not remove salt, so it goes from the septic system directly into the aquifer, and then it just spreads, and it's a problem that every public water supply has to deal with, and it's throughout the state, and it's probably throughout the country, certainly in the northern states, where there's a lot of salting and things like that. I mean, we work for people that, whole water systems that have been contaminated, and they have to buy water from other water systems to blend it to keep their sodium and chloride level down if they try to shoot under 100. So that's just, if you look, you should look it up, because it's a big issue. It's not just you.
We actually, just so you're aware, I actually looked into bringing water from Connecticut. I spoke to Aquarian Water. They're the ones that serve New Canaan. And they were actually considering it. At the time, they were doing their due diligence with regards to moving into New York State and doing work in New York State. They then decided not to because the regulatory hurdles in New York. But had we done that, we would still have the issue with PFAS because their limits are higher than New York. So we would get clean treated water and still have to put in this $2 million pre-tested filtration system.
In 2004, we looked at buying
Norwalk, right?
Yeah, it was like $9 million to do all the work that was necessary. So the town board at that time elected to rebuild the water plant.
Right. But that would have been ideal, because it's about a mile to tap into one of their mains over in New Canaan. And we would use the plant just for distribution. But didn't happen.
Yeah, that was.
So I think that's.
And the cost of the upgrades.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Hi, first I want to just say thank you for having this meeting, and I hope that as we go forward in this process, you will have meetings like this again for the residents so that we are kept aware of what's going on, because I know a lot of people don't necessarily have access to a computer or email. And it would be nice to have a bigger audience here, hopefully at the next meeting if we do this again. My question is regarding the water closets. Who maintains and is in charge of the water closets?
That's VRI.
Okay.
The systems that are in there are VRI. That's where their service ends. The service lines, yeah.
So my question is, I'm in an end unit that has the water closet right outside of it. And I know there have been several units in the condos that have had floods, where a valve broke and their units were destroyed. One right on my road on Oakridge, the next building over from me. So I went and looked inside the water closet in my, that's adjacent to my unit, and the valves look new, but the connection, I guess it is, I have pictures if you want to see it, between the valve and the pipe, is rusted on all of them, and one of them doesn't even have a valve. There's 4 of those meters, and then there's 2 valves on each side. And out of the 8 valves, 7 of them are completely corroded, and 1 does not even have a valve. And so I'm afraid, like many people who have written about this on Nextdoor, which is our way of communicating with each other, that I'm going to be the next one to have a flood in my unit unless those issues are addressed. And have all the water closets been looked at to see what the conditions of those valves are in each of the closets? Because I know you were changing valves for the flushing. So if you were already in the closet, I'm assuming you saw all these issues.
Aren't you responsible for the singles?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so we're responsible so there's the main in the street, and then off of the main, there's a 2-inch service connection, and then there is a shutoff valve, and then from that valve, there's a line that goes underground, a 3/4 inch line, underground into the water closet. So we are responsible, the town, I guess, or Oakridge would be responsible for that valve and up to that valve in the ground. So anything from the valve in the ground up into the water closet.
So the HOA is responsible for maintaining the meter and the valves attached to it?
Yes.
They're responsible for.
What's that? No, the meter, yes, the meter, so up to that valve and the meter is our responsibility, the meter itself. But as far as the rest of the piping, the connection, we can do work to it, we can upgrade it with the approval and, you know, if they would like us to.
So
But it's not part of the general.
What I'm talking about is where the valve is attached. Who's responsible? What's my email? Marie? Oh, unit, 168 Oakridge. Okay, thank you. I think it should be looked at for all the units, because we've already had people that have had floods. Yeah, it shouldn't just be mine because I'm standing here. There's other
Mike, let me
people.
know about that once you take a look, and then we can coordinate with the,
Yeah,
I'd like to
we can
know
get
whether
together.
it's, that the
I have
location
pictures
is.
if you'd like. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you, and thank you for organizing. Thank you for organizing this meeting and for people attending in good conscience. I just have two questions. Now that the trihalo methane problem is resolved, which in my mind was the greatest carcinogenic risk that we were facing with our water, I filter my water from my sink, so I do have potable to my standards water that comes from my sink. I do not filter my shower. So are there current contaminants that are coming through our system that is absorbed through the body with an unfiltered shower?
We're required to test for disinfection byproducts every year. And since the implementation of the SCADA upgrade and the chemical upgrade in 2018, you said it was, there was, we've been well below the TTHM limit. And we also perform bi-weekly water exchanges. So as Bill was saying, disinfection byproducts are produced when chlorine comes into contact with bromides. So there's chlorine in the water, and in the distribution system, we need to use that to disinfect the water for bacteria.
As New York City and other municipalities.
Every water system.
Actually, the water that I took a sip of this morning, you could sense there's a little bit of chlorine. It almost tastes like the water my dad has in that.
What you're saying is what comes out of a shower, not drunk, you don't drink it.
Yes.
Is there anything currently in our water which is dangerous to skin absorption?
No.
That's the answer. Thank you. I appreciate that. Second question is if we do not get the grant that is going to Maloney's office and any of the other grants that we're trying to procure to solve this problem, where are we? And that's a 2-year plan, even if it does come through. So we're really looking at a very long-term, not guaranteed resolution here. So I'm feeling a little bit frustrated after so many years of difficulties and not knowing that we are looking at a future where our water will be made whole. And if we don't get the grants, what's plan B?
We're applying for a water infrastructure improvement grant to go along with that. Most of the water supplies that have PFOAs and are going to apply for those grants likely. And what they do is they cover 60% total cost, and that comes through EFC, Environmental Facilities Corp of New York State. So that's where most people get their grant money from.
Right.
So what's available is a 60% grant.
Right.
That's the backup.
That's the back.
And that's not, so New York State is not committed to making those grants available yet.
Exactly.
We will know that in the fall, with the trihalo
If we get
methanes.
the grants in the fall, then it's a potential 2-year plan.
Potential, yes. So the
Okay.
first step is to get the Department of Health to give us the blessing that our design is
Right.
fine. In fact, we've already started what's called a SECRA. Help me with that.
State environmental.
The SECRA, yeah. So we're going through that, taking out those steps now to get that approval. And so that when the DOH does give us their approval, we can then take the next step with going out to bid.
Bond resolution.
Bond resolution first, right. Because we may have to pay for it first, right? So we need to, so that's,
Money is always it's the money that you get is reimbursement money.
Right.
So you
right.
borrow money, you pay for the fix, and then they reimburse you.
Okay. So basically, if I could put this meeting in my mind together, we have a proposal out for grant money. We have machinery that we think can work for us, supplemental equipment, building enhancement of our water filtration system, and we're just basically on hold. And so
No, we're moving forward with the design and the.
We are. Okay, so the building is being repurposed as we speak.
Well, we're getting,
The design.
the design is, yeah, we're waiting on approval of.
We're waiting on approvals.
Yeah, the engineering report has been.
And that will house the equipment that we would use if we get the grants.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
the time.
Okay, thank you.
My understanding is that the water company is responsible to delivering good water to the building.
Correct.
After that, it enters the different, I live in Oakridge condos. It enters the buildings and your responsibility is over because you've delivered good water. So if we're getting lead or copper in our water, then it's up to apparently either the homeowner or the association to take care of that issue.
No. The water district is responsible for the quality of the water.
To the building.
To the building, but through the faucet. The reason we have the anti-corrosion control plan.
Right.
Is to prevent lead and copper from leaching into the water.
Right.
Okay. So we add chemicals that coat the pipes, your pipes, the pipes in the building.
Right.
To prevent the water from coming in contact with the lead and the copper.
Okay.
Okay.
And
it has to be a well-used faucet because it has to have a constant flow of that water that carries that coating.
Right.
To lay down in those, in those faucets, in those fixtures.
So if I have a second bathroom that
You don't
isn't
use it
used
that much.
very much,
then
you have to run the
You
water.
have to run the water on a regular basis to make sure the pipes remain coated.
Okay, but in order to avoid that, if I got my water tested, whether I ran it or didn't run it, then it would be for me to submit it to the association, correct? All right, well, where does, I thought well, this isn't a question for the water district. I thought that you were responsible for in the walls. Isn't that where the piping is, or is that incorrect?
Services just your unit. You are responsible no matter where it is.
Okay.
The air conditioning condenser unit is outside in the common element.
Right.
That's outside of your unit.
Right.
But it's yours to maintain.
Okay.
Think of it the same way as a pipe that services just your unit.
Okay, what if everyone in my building was had their water tested and it all came out the same?
Instead of what ifs.
Why not what if?
Well, because answering what ifs doesn't mean anything. You have to deal with facts. Right now, the facts are that they've done the water testing before letting it out.
Right.
The RO has done it. We have done it as an association throughout the conference.
Right.
They have done it through what the health department says would be the areas that would likely be.
Yeah, maybe Michael, yeah, sorry.
It's getting late, guys. Yeah, that's okay. I'm here as part of, I'm here for the water district, I'm not here for everything else, but I'm here. But again, if you're handling, if it's just your unit, that you're responsible, would you like me to speak or Joyce? Please come on. Okay. It's fine. But one at a time. So the question was, what do we do if everyone has it tested? Right now, we've had 2 tests done in a very short period of time. There is no lead that has been detected in the 2 tests. VLI did a test based on what the health department told them where they should be tested. We did a test in 6 different streets. Okay, just random samples that we did. And they came out negative for that. You decide you want to take that test, then do that test. We feel very comfortable that there's no lead in the water. Now, as Bill Bright said, run your water before you use it. The other thing that they asked that be done in order to make the test correct is take off your aerator, which is at the end of your faucet, and clean that out, because sometimes there's sediment in there and the water stays in it. Those things will help.
Water softeners, too. No water softeners.
If you have a water softener, that could be a problem.
You'll have no water softener also.
And if anyone has a water softener, that's not an association issue, because you put that in, the association did not. And that's what we're trying to say. So the issue is that if you think you have a lead problem, have a lead test. Right now, it doesn't appear that there is anything that we've done. Now, if lead shows up again, we'll look at it. I'm sorry?
In 3 years, when it's tested again.
No. If lead shows up,
That's the test by the district, by the water supply. On the water,
how often have you done the test before?
It's been annually for forever since we started, and then after a certain amount of.
How many times have you had a lead problem in the 8 years or 9 years or whatever it was?
None. We would not be getting. So this, like what you're saying, and this is a health department concern. If they tell us to sample it 10 times a year, we will sample it 10 times a year. And the reason that we got reduced is because all the results were in good standing. If we had lead here and lead there and lead pop up, they would not say, okay, now do it every 3 years.
But the thing is,
Yeah, it would be more frequent.
you're testing the same units and you're testing the.
We didn't test the same, we did.
Once every 3 years.
Yeah,
You're
we did.
testing 4 or 5 units. That doesn't give everybody.
10 units.
You
And
tested.
I understand it's a health department and they change the rules. But if there's no lead, then we will test again for 3 years. And it's the same units.
We tested 6 different units.
How many people live in Oakridge?
And again, just so you know, so they determine those sites based on when they were built, so those units.
But it's not working for us. We do not do the water. We pay water bills, we pay for bottled water, we pay taxes in Westchester County. And I'm sorry, I understand you guys are doing your job, and most of it, 90% of this has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the fact that Oakridge water is toxic, and whether or not it happens to be good in 3 months or in the testing every quarter, it doesn't mean that there hasn't been a problem and it can't be tested more regularly. It needs to be resolved. And like, I'm sorry, but Plaza works with us, you're not determining our rules. We want more testing, we want everyone's water to be tested. Yeah, you just said that, I mean, you're gonna test the same 6 places and you tested it and it's fine.
We tested different units.
Every unit should be tested. Every unit.
Excuse me. We tested different units than what they tested. Throughout the process, that's what I said.
Okay, well, I think every unit should be tested.
Those test your unit.
Sure, okay, of course I'm gonna test my unit. It doesn't seem like there's very much of a voice of support from Plaza, and that's probably half the problem.
So we have, there's one more hand up, one hand. So I'm gonna ask this person to unmute. This is Ava George.
I have a question. Have you've tested for lead? You've tested for bacteria. Have you tested for radon?
Radon, have we tested for radon?
Radon, there's no requirement to test for radon. We test for the other radionuclides. We test for uranium and radium, and we test for alpha particles and beta particles. And the treatment process removes those. I mean, they're in the raw water, but the treatment process removes them.
Right.
But specifically, have you tested for radon? Because radon is very high in this area because of all of the.
It's the result of uranium decomposing, right? That's where radon comes from. We test the radium. We test the radium and the uranium.
Right.
So we don't test for radium.
Right. Does that answer your question, Ava?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Thank you. Here, Jeremy Zittimer, one question. Go ahead, Jeremy. Oh, is he gone? Nope. Okay, I think we're good. Wait a minute. Hold on a second.
Sorry, I think I pressed my mute button at the same moment that you unmuted me, so I remuted myself. I just wanted to, so point of clarification. So bacteria came up as one of the concerns. Like, can you just confirm definitively that there's no concern about bacteria that would be entering, like the point of entry, like once it's out of the town's jurisdiction, there's no bacteria that is crossing that point, or if there is, like where it would possibly be coming from, even if it's like within the units themselves?
I'll let DRI answer that question quicker.
The question
Bacteria, is there any bacteria at the entry point?
If there was bacteria at the entry point, we would see it in the distribution. So the distribution sample is where they make a sample because that's what's already at the resident's fingertips. If we have a hit on bacteria within the distribution sample system, we're required to resample that exact location, resample 5 connections upstream, 5 connections downstream, and then every source. So every source well that we use, all for bacteria. And we sample bacteria. We have been forever, once a month from the distribution samples that the health department mandate, and they're all in good standing.
And you're monitoring for the chlorine level.
So that's part of the chlorine residual.
Right.
Chlorine is a disinfectant used to kill the bacteria or any sort of coliforms. We have to maintain a minimum of 0.7 milligrams per liter, 0.8, milligrams per liter.
Free chlorine.
What's that?
Free chlorine.
Yeah, 0.8 milligrams per liter of free chlorine at the entry point. So that's what's going into the distribution system, and that's also, designed to maintain a adequate residual for killing bacteria to the farthest point of distribution.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I'd love at the end of this night, like a document when this is all over, for those who couldn't be here, mapping each complaint to its solution or response. One for PFAS, one for pink water, one for the bacteria, et cetera. But I really appreciate the thoroughness that you've all provided tonight. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
So just one question, just to echo a lot of the frustrations that happen within the Oakridge community with regards to Plaza and the management system. Tony, is there a way that we could work with you to make sure that the people who are supposed to be advocating for us as the management group are advocating for us in the way that we think is appropriate? Because I think from being here tonight, one thing that I've really learned is seems like these guys who a lot of people express frustration with are doing their jobs quite adequately. Whereas there's a number of things that you see in Nextdoor and in the community conversations about sort of a lack of service from Plaza. Whether it be responsiveness from this or lack of response to phone calls, or I might have missed it, but I don't know a way to get directly in touch with you via an email address or anything like that. So maybe I can catch that afterwards. There's just a no reply Appfolio email that we get the group stuff from. So I guess that would be the question with regards to this specific water situation. I know, for example, someone mentioned that they had a really rough looking closet and you'll come to visit it. How do we start that communication, ensure that there's a follow-up? There's a lot of complaints that have gone on deaf ears.
And who
what street are you on? Who was your board person?
Laurel Ridge, so, yeah,
Talk to them.
okay.
What's your review?
168.
Okay, yeah, talk to Paul first.
What was that? Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna have Frank at the board process.
Okay.
So, yeah, get to Paul, get to me, and I'm bittersweet.
Okay. Great, thank you.
And you know what, I know everybody's next door, but it's not an official plaza.
It doesn't have to be, it's the way that.
Say again. Okay, and I know that. With all of us, even if they don't live here, so he's there, so next election, vote somebody else. Nobody gets lost.
So when is the next election so that we can do a better job?
So the annual meeting.
The last year one was canceled or rescheduled. And this is the frustration, and we say to take it out to the appropriate channels, there's no channel. Let's let's try to maintain some order here.
Look how many people showed up to the speaker, they're sick and tired of
So I think, let's hold on to this discussion for now. What I'd like to do is end this meeting, and thank you for hold on a second. What is another?
to your street representative.
Let me just wrap this up. These guys got to go with that one more. So, excuse me. Okay. These guys drove a long way to be here tonight. It's late, so I'd like to wrap this up and thank them. Delaware, and if I can help with the communication, I know it's a committee to represent the different parts of the community. Yeah. I'll let you guys figure it out. If I can help you anyway, thank you all very much.